Hello everyone and welcome to this video, which is in our Great Engine Game series. I'm Grandmaster Matthew Sadler and we are taking a look at a game from the CCCC21 Rapid Main. This is Torch against Leela. Leela fans, avert your eyes. But it's a very, very interesting game, and yeah, Torch played this very, very well, I think. Leela too, up to a certain point, but just missed a crucial defence. So what was the book? The book was, I guess, a slightly dodgy Sicilian, although not the worst I've ever seen. After a6, this move a3 from white against the Najdorf would have been a complete amateur's move in the good old days, but yeah, nowadays it's been played by all the top players. So we head back into a Reengineering, which is, well, a little bit risky for black nowadays. I think Najdorf systems with e5 are tending to be regarded nowadays as much more, yeah, much more reliable than Reengineering positions. So Queen e2, Queen c7, and g4. Always the approach of choice against this. h6 from black. That's always a good idea, in actual fact, to stop this pawn from moving to g5. Yeah, in the good old days of playing the Reengineering, black players used to let this happen, move the knight away, claim that whilst white was wasting all this time, black was ready to launch an attack on the queen side. But I think that nowadays, you know, black players feel that you should really stop this pawn from moving to g5 easily. Castles and then knight c6. So yeah, I mean, these types of positions are generally scoring pretty well in engine games. Why is that? Well, I mean, white's got you know, plenty of space, plenty of opportunities for getting those kingside pawns moving, and well, for black it's rather more difficult to really get some sort of queenside attack going. Yeah, and there's always this question about where to put the king. Obviously, on the king side is not a good idea with g5 coming in, but on the queen side, this is, you know, somewhat airy somehow. So yeah, I mean, this is also the point. And you know, in the good old days, used to say, don't worry, you know, you keep your king in the centre and then wait for as long as possible. But that tends to be also quite risky against engines as well. A couple of ideas now. h4. Is one possibility, and that was my engines were quite keen on it. I think we're out of the CCC book now. Torch played another major move, which is to play rook g1, and this is a nice flexible move actually. You might play g5 immediately. You might play h4 and g5 and not have to worry anymore about you know, the recapturing on g5 with the h pawn. You know, you've sidestepped that pin. But what you can also do, you can also play the move f4, and on top of that, this rook can also come round to g3 as well. So yeah, I mean, it's a very flexible move. Basically, it just keeps lots of options open for how you want to attack on the king side. Knight takes d4 played by Leela, bishop d4 and e5, and well, really what I said before, e5 systems really thought to be the most reliable way of playing. So Leela even a tempo down, looking to play for an e5 system. Yeah, I mean, the point about having a pawn on e5, okay, you do weaken this d5 square, but you are stopping e4 to e5. You're grabbing some central space, giving the white pieces less freedom there. Bishop e3 and then bishop e6, and then once again it's a choice for white. You could play the move h4, which is what Stockfish and Dragon were playing a lot in my games, just looking to get in g5, drive the knight away, and then be able to play the knight into d5. That's yeah, slight edge for white. And what Torch played is a little bit more aggressive, really, f4. So threatening the move f5, also threatening you know, g5 away as well in this way. So I mean, I think really in Najdorf, for a Najdorf player, e takes f4 is well, automatic reaction, maybe not quite. There are some lines in the bishop e2 Najdorf where you allow the white pawn to go to f5, but in general, when a pawn comes to f4 and white's threatening to play f5, you know, gaining so much kingside space, you take on f4, and well, that gives black a nice square on e5 for the knight. Some play around on the dark squares around this white central pawn. Slight downside, d6 pawn is weak. well, you know, the d5 square remains a weakness. d6 pawn being weak, it's a mixture somehow. I mean, very often, you know, if white wants to win that pawn, white has to give up the dark squared bishop. Okay, winning a pawn, but then, yeah, all of the dark squares, you know, around this pawn on the e4 are weak. You've played a move like g4, there's even more dark squares of the weak. Black's often got, you know, decent compensation. I've definitely played positions, you know, with black where I've just given up the d6 pawn, been a pawn down, but not really worried about it. And, well, we're going to see that theme a little bit later as well. So, knight d7 played, good solid move, coming round to e5. And now king b1. There's various move orders. Knight d5 was played immediately as well by my engines, but also king b1, and then Torch is going to play knight d5 later. I think the key thing is really, you know, how you want to recapture on d5. Do you want to play rook takes d5, keep that d5 square for your pieces, and also the pressure on d6? Or do you want to play e takes d5 and, well, get rid of your isolated pawn, open up this diagonal for the bishop against the king, also open the e file as well. Something to be said for both of them. I would prefer what Torch does, to be honest, which is to keep that d5 square for the pieces. It feels very much like you're you know, you're keeping more of a grip on the black position that way. After e takes d5, I sort of feel that black's, you know, got some extra freedom. The only thing was that the engines were playing knight c5 and then, you know, king f8 somehow. But this was a game Stockfish against Dragon, and actually Dragon was doing quite well here, playing quite a nice strategy here. So knight on c5, king around to f8, bishop on there, g5 to hold, and then the king coming to g7, and, well, you're going to play rook e8, you're going to get the bishop to e5 eventually. This was working out quite nicely for black. Reminded me in some way of a game I played against Vishy Anand 1998 or something, where I got a really great game. So yeah, you know, in general, I like very much what Torch did, which was just a calm king b1 and then rook takes d5 here. And I mean, you know, what are white's breaks in this position? What is white going to do? Well, I mean, there's pressure against d6. There is always the possibility to take on e5 like this, and if you can get a bishop onto c4, get pressure along this diagonal. I've been watching, actually, looking at a classic game between Tarrasch and Schlechter, where this sort of thing happened, actually, from a Rai Lopez type of position, and that's why I'm thinking about it. But you know, that is a possibility. Also, there's just, you know, the breaks, either g5 straight away or h4 and g5, and you know, maybe get some the bishop pressuring along here as well. So yeah, I mean, white is just nicely better here. But it's nothing, you know, totally horrific in terms of an engine openings that engines tend to get with black. This is, yeah, a pretty decent one, I think. So finally, on move 19, Leela castle kingside, and well, that's a sensible thing to do. I mean, there's not so much attacking firepower really left over. I mean, if white had a knight and a knight was coming into here, then this would be a very serious business. But yeah, those pieces have disappeared. So, you know, you sort of feel that with a good solid knight on e5, it's possible to protect the king side. Torch played g5, bishop takes g5. Yeah, my engines also looked at taking like this, throwing in this queen b6 idea, and only then taking on g5 and looking for some counterplay with the queen here. Also quite interesting idea, you know. But well, what Leela did was pretty sensible and solid. So, you know, I mean, nothing wrong with it. Queen e7. Just bringing the queen across to the king's side, ready to defend some dark squares, and now h4. But now a very interesting moment, actually, because in this position, if you give it this to Komodo and you give it to Stockfish, they both play rook c6 without exception, and then we get bishop e2, g6, queen d2, rook fc8, c3 here. Yeah, I mean, you know, white's going to play the king to a1 here, the king to a1 rather, and you know, at some stage play for h5 and just keep on playing around, really. Some pressure against the black king side here, some pressure against the d pawn. Yeah, I mean, it's not so bad. Black's passive, but yeah, but it's possible to hold. I mean, just having a look at some games, Stockfish was winning a lot of games with white here against Dragon, but also drawing some as well. Obviously, Stockfish doing normally a good job of drawing against Dragon. Yeah, I mean, let's just have maybe a look at a game just so you get a feel for it. Knight e5, King a1 out of the way, Rook e8, Queen g1, h5, Rook g3, g5. This was quite common from the engines, just to play this the pawns to f6 and g5. And well, you can see how solid this structure is really. I mean, white moves this, got some nice pressure on the light squares, but difficult to get back somehow. Obviously the bishop's got a good square on d5 there eventually, but yeah, hard to be sure what you're making of it there. So yeah, it's a pretty tough positional struggle, but in general you would expect black to be able to hold this. So I mean, that's not bad at all. However, what Leela went for was something quite interesting, and also not silly at all. Leela just played the move g6 and just gave up this pawn on d6, and then played rook fd8 here. And actually, if you give this to Leela and Stockfish, I gave it on Chessify because, well, certainly for Leela, I managed to get quicker analysis out of Leela, and a more recent version I've got running on my machines. So always do that. And Leela was just looking at playing bishop e2, after which it was expecting rook c6. So actually it would just turn out to be a transposition that way. So Stockfish also was lightly preferring bishop e2 to rook takes d6. So you could sort of view it as in a way a sort of positional trap really. Leela's sort of saying, okay, I want you to take this pawn because then I can exchange off a pair of rooks. I mean, Stockfish's valuation certainly at the start goes quite high, but tends to drop down the more it analyses, down to something like 0.54, whereas it was sort of around 1 before it actually captured the pawn. Only after a lot of nodes though. To be honest, I was a little bit in two minds about it. I mean, if white was forced to play rook takes d8, I'd definitely say, yeah, absolutely fine for black, no problem. But the fact that Torch could play this position, transform this d pawn into a pass one, with the bishop on g2 coming in, yeah, I don't know. I wasn't hugely impressed by this, I have to say. But somehow, yeah, Queen f6 played. It's kind of tough for white to get the pieces organised. Yeah, this pawn can be attacked. This pawn is going to be weak. Likelihood is that black will get that one back. And then the question is, how good is this passed d pawn? How weak are these queenside pawns? How strong are these as a sort of a counter-attack? And, well, looks basically like the d pawn is strong. Those queenside pawns are weak, but black should be able to just about hold it together. So Torch played rook g3 here. Very courageous move for me. Again, those are difficult moves for humans to play. Just give away your extra pawn just like that. Always very impressive when a strong player does something like that. And it's a very engine decision to be that concrete, that decisive, that understanding that a pawn isn't necessary. What matters is the rest. But rook e3, knight g4, and rook e2. And what are the engine? What is Torch playing for? Actually playing for d6, bishop g2, and the possibility somehow to support the pawn with the rook, and maybe also the possibility of playing a move like queen d4 as well. But this was actually where Leela made probably the decisive mistake. It looks like, kind of. Because after the move that Leela played, the engine results in my games got really, really bad. What Stockfish wants is the move rook d8 and queen d4, queen f6 takes, and c4. And originally, when looking at this, Stockfish is plus 1.4 for white. Really thinks that this is a massive position. But as time goes by, tends to think that it can actually hold this position. Rook c8, rook e3, king f8. Now, what Leela thought that it was would be able to get the king round to b4 and just win these pawns basically, and that this would be impossible for black to hold. But somehow, Stockfish feeling that it's able to to blockade. Puts this knight round to b6 here, attacking the pawn on c4, also threatening maybe something like rook c5, and well, ended up playing this type of position and claiming that it was going to make a draw this way. Not 100% sure. Looks pretty fraught to me. I mean, you know, this was agreed a draw between Dragon and Stockfish. I could imagine getting this all wrong as black in a practical game. But it seems like you know, Stockfish feels that this resulting position is holdable somehow. What Leela did was play knight f6, d6 and rook d8. But after this, Leela never manages to get a sniff of winning this d-pawn, and you know, with white being able to play the pawn to d6, the power of this bishop attacking these queenside pawns becomes huge. And I think one of the big things is that, you know, if this d-pawn got captured but pieces got exchanged, like you know, rooks and queens or something, and white got hold of one or more of these queenside pawns, the resulting positions are just really good for white. You know, bishop against knight. When white's got pass pawns on the queen side, black's got pass pawns on the king side. Yeah, the bishop is just a way superior piece there for both supporting its own pawns and, of course, keeping the other pawns in check. And that judgment seems to be at the basis of everything, really. So, bishop g2, queen f4, rook d2, rook d7, and now rook d4. Very nice move from white. Very nice manoeuvre, this. Bishop stopping knight e4, rook stopping knight e4, bishop attacking the pawn on b7. And what's white's idea? Well, white's idea really, if white can get in c4 to c5 to protect the d6 pawn, then Bob's your uncle, because that just means that this rook is free, and well, that black king is not completely safe if the white queen and rook can get involved there. So queen g3 played, bishop f3. And now the move a5, and well, what Leela's trying to do, Leela's trying to yeah, restrict the onslaught of white's queenside pawns. So c4 and queen e5. Queen e5 is played to stop c4 to c5. So you know, if you try to play knight e8 straight away, I'd just play c5, and yeah, I mean, it's just well, just horrific for black. So queen e5 played, and now king a2. Oops, sorry, king a2. If you go knight e8 here, I've got rook e4, which is rather nasty, getting out of the way. And the reason white played king b1 was that black no longer has the queen f5 that he had before, pinning the rook to the king. So it just means now that this just wins a piece. So king g7 played, bishop g2, out of the way. Just actually looking round to play bishop h3 followed by d7. So a4 played by Leela. Queen a4, queen takes d4, of course, and well, Leela's hoping that this pawn on a4 is going to restrict the white king and give some chance of perpetual. So queen d3, queen c5, bishop h3, rook d8, queen d2, and this is a lovely move from Torch. Wasn't obvious at all to me what the idea was. I thought it was just some random waiting move, but actually it's much more than that. But now with these pieces like this, d7 is also a big threat, really tying up this rook completely. So Leela played knight d7 to stop that, and now a really nice move, rook h4, threatening queen h6 check. And well, you can't go rook h8 because the knight on d7 is hanging. So black has to weaken the queen side with g5, and now rook e4. And well, it has really been worth, you know, white could have played the move rook e4 immediately, but actually it's really worth playing this move g5, because now the queen is tied down to the defense. It just means that the king is much weaker. So knight f6, rook d4 coming back, and just waiting to see what black will do. Now if you go back to d7, we're just going to take and go queen d3. It's very subtle moves, loads of these sort of Karpov-like creeping moves, but the point is white's threatening rook d5, and then rook g5 is going to be really weak. I mean, you can go queen e5, I go rook d5, queen f4, c5, and we've got all sorts of ideas like queen c3 and then c6, for example. That's possible, or just lining up on this g5 pawn. I mean, this is really nice play from Torch, just really squeezing Leela, very much in the Leela style. You could imagine this, you know, the game being sort of reversed somehow almost. So king f8, d7, tying up the rook completely, b6, queen c3, queen e5, queen b4, queen c5, queen d2. A little bit of shuffling around here, just waiting to see, well, you know, whether you can exploit the weakness of this pawn. So king e7 played, sort of vaguely looking to somehow capture that d7 pawn. Queen e2 check, king f8, and rook d1. What is white aiming for here? Well, actually, I think one of the ideas would be to play the queen to d3 and then play the rook to f1 and start looking at trying to play rook f5, hitting these two. I very much like it. I mean, something that I noticed very much through with Alpha Zero's games, and you also see it a lot with Leela, that you know, whenever the neural nets get a great position, one of the key things that they do, and it sometimes seems like they're making no progress at all, but it's shuffling their pieces on their great outposts. And yeah, you know, you had a rook on d4 and a queen on d3. Now we're going to put rook on d1, queen on d3, and just let the rook go loose somehow. You know, shuffling like that, and somehow it just destabilizes the opponent's position. You know, it's very, very typical of those engines, and of course, you know, Stockfish and all the other great engines can do the same as well. So queen c6, bishop f5, queen c5. Yeah, I mean, if you try and go knight d7, we just line up again, something like queen g4. I'm going to win a piece there. So queen c5, rook e1, very nice play there. If queen f5, we've got queen e7 takes there. King g7, queen d3. So yeah, we've done a little swap around, and this rook is now eyeing all sorts of stuff there. King f8, king a1. That's a useful move. We're getting out of any queen c4 checks. So now this white queen is going to be able to start thinking about doing something like queen h3, for example. And yeah, it's kind of tough to know what black should do. If king g7, we play rook f1, just line up on that one. And for example, queen e5, queen d2, hitting g7, g5, and imperceptibly, as well as attacking on the f-file, this rook was protecting the bishop, and that's actually cutting the communication of the queen to the g5 pawn. So off we go, and well, after king f8, queen g5, black's in massive trouble there. So Leela played g4, which is kind of trying to put the pawn safe and also stopping the queen from coming across. And now a lovely move, rook f1, just defend that bishop on f5, queen e5, and now queen d2. So the rook covered the bishop on f5, leaving the queen free again, and we're looking at all sorts of ways there. So what Leela did actually was very clever. Hadn't seen this one coming, just using the g3 pawn as a decoy. So you're going to try and push this one away and trade it for the d pawn. The big problem though there is that, okay, the d pawn was great, that's lovely, but getting rid of the g pawn means that the black king is even weaker. I mean, it's one of those amazing things with engine games that a human player would have collapsed years ago, you know, and but with engines, you know, they're putting tough resistance, you know, up till the very last moment. But what you notice is that their position gets eroded and eroded. They have to give a concession, like giving up, you know, cover of their king in order to get rid of an advanced pawn, and then the next phase of attack begins. And yeah, it makes you realise how multi-phase chess is, which you don't really realise all the time in human games, because there's tactical blunders and all that, and defenders collapsing before all the resources are exhausted. That's what I really love about engine games. So bishop h3 played, knight takes d7. So obviously, you know, if bishop d7, we've got g2 here. We can distract the pieces just a little bit. I mean, it's still very, very dangerous for black here. But yeah, okay, you know, I mean, still some distraction. Actually, what Torch did was also very nice. Rook e1, queen f6, bishop d7 now, g2, queen b4, king g7, bishop h3, queen f3, and now simply bishop g2. Takes and queen b6, and somehow, yeah, I mean, I really love this actually, because somehow Torch has maneuvered its queen like this, but this queen has got a real double purpose. It's threatening queen takes d8, but it's also supporting rook g1 really. I mean, it's gorgeous, just a whole shifting of angle, but still aiming towards that king on g7, really lovely. So queen d2, queen g1, and actually, you know, what you notice, I'll just show you that again because it's quite, I found it quite remarkable. You know, queen b4 check, bishop h3 takes, queen g2, and then queen coming round there. So we've actually done this this sort of maneuver like this, you know, and now queen h1, and well, the king is in danger with this rook cutting off the king there. So king g7, rook g1, queen h8, really hyperactive queen, stockfish like queen, you'd say in actual fact. King d7, rook f1. I mean, I do have to say, I think you know, this game, I think it's one of the best games I've seen Torch play. You know, against Leela, obviously strong opponent. Not a an opening where you just say, oh, you know, well, of course, you know, white won there. Was, you know, a reasonably tight opening, and yeah, Leela's kind of been you know, squeezed somehow in a sort of a Leela-like fashion. So yeah, well done, Torch developers. I think this is a very fine game indeed. So king c8 played, queen c5, queen b5, very important, covering this b3 square, and that gives white the opportunity to take on f7 without allowing any perpetual checks. Well, the best that Leela could find was to give this up, but rook and 3 against rook, yeah, way too much, and Torch won the game very, very quickly. So there we are. I hope you enjoyed that. I thought this was an excellent exposition of Torch's skills in actual fact. Yeah, I mean, I'm still getting to grips with what sort of engine it is in actual fact. I think, you know, less out and out tactical than Stockfish. Yeah, a little bit calmer than Dragon. I think. I would say some sort of, you know, I would say it was a very nice amalgam of Koivisto and Dragon, to be honest. You know, with yeah, with somehow just a little bit more strength on top somehow. You know, it's looking like very nice in between style, I'd say, between Leela and Stockfish. So yeah, you know, very, very exciting. Very much enjoying seeing a new engine like this coming along. You know, and yeah, you know, fighting it out with Leela and Stockfish. But yeah, I thought it was a lovely positional game. I also liked very much, you know, what Leela did. This positional pawn sacrifice, you know, was a very interesting defense there. You know, and even understanding that even with this pawn being converted from an isolated pawn into a pass pawn, you know, black still had enough, in principle, enough, you know, chances for counterplay. But I think it was a very difficult evaluation thing. You know, not at all obvious that that this sort of position with these with this, you know, 4 against 2 on the queen side, with a bishop against knight and pawns on both sides, that this would be okay for black. You know, that was a tough ask somehow, but I thought that the Torch finished this off beautifully. You know, just demonstrating, you know, the power of the bishop against the knight in these sort of positions where there are pawns on both sides, and likelihood of the queens getting exchanged and an ending situation taking place. Again, shocked, you know, that the engines are assessing this as you know, +2 or something like that. But well, good general thing to remember for human players. You know, the general assessments about these positions. So there we are. Hope you enjoyed that. I've got lots more engine games to come. I don't know whether it's me or whatever, but I just have the feeling that there are just an astonishing number of really, really brilliant engine games being played at the moment, both at the CCC and at the TCCC. So I think, yeah, I don't know. Feels like engines have really just made another leap forward, you know, in terms of attractiveness of games and concepts and everything. So really having a whale of a time looking at it. Just don't have enough time to look at all the wonderful games, but well, trying to do as many as possible. I mean, if you like it, if you like what's happening on this channel, then please give a like, subscribe to the channel, tell your friends about it. And take also a look at my new books, Silicon Road to Chess Improvement, which I'm really, you know, it's been out for a little while now, but still really proud of it. And Reengineering the Chess Classics, which I think I think it's one of those examples about, if you let the engines sort of loose on our game, on chess, what sort of amazing things can they discover? And we just took some of the greatest games played by classical chess players that have ever been played, and the engines just find astonishing new things in that, and also trying to explain it in a good human understandable way as well. On my part, I think it's a really very unusual book. Don't think there's anything like it at all, and I think it's a really good one as well. So we'll take a look at the sample pages, and maybe on Forward Chess as well. Have a look at that one and see whether you enjoyed. I think anyone who enjoys this channel will really like it. But otherwise, thanks very much. Please keep the comments coming. Always nice when people make comments about videos or have questions. I do try and answer them in a reasonable time frame. And otherwise, thanks very much for watching, and keep your eyes peeled for more videos. Thanks for watching.